Welcome to another Next Gen Leaders episode. This is Martin Jagers. Thank you again for listening. We've had some incredible guests along the way, and we continue to actually stretch our imaginations and our thought process in leadership. And today is no different. Today, we invite and welcome Mark Silverman. Now, I'm going to do a bit of an introduction in Mark, but there's some highlights I also want to talk about at the back end of my introduction, and we'll get straight into listening to Mark and hearing his 8 to 10 gold nuggets that he shares with us on how to all become better individuals and leaders to help influence and guide everybody's success. So, Mark is an executive coach, author, and podcast host. He works with leaders all around the world and their teams to help them achieve sustainable success in all areas of business. And the other thing I really like we cover on this podcast as well is their lives, their personal journey. And we tell some personal stories along the way here. Now, what an incredible success story. He is an author of a best-selling book and program called Only Tens 2.0, Control Your To-Do List, Transform Your Life, which has sold over 70,000 copies to date. Mark is now venturing into a new program that he's calling The Rising Leader, which launches early next year and also will have a podcast of the same name. And that's where we start this episode, is talking about what does Mark mean by The Rising Leader and what are the cool fundamentals behind it that can help us as leaders become better. Hope you enjoy. Mark, let's start there, man. Let's start with The Rising Leader program. Just share with us what exactly is it. It's a massive passion of yours right now. I can see the energy in your body. But let's share with us about the program and what exactly do you want to get out of that for your clients and your leaders and readers and listeners.
What I realized over the past, maybe 5-6 years, what I've been doing more and more, my practice, I'm an executive coach, and my practice was about 50% CEOs of smaller companies, entrepreneurs, and about 50% people in corporate America, the C-suite or VP level or high director level. And it was about 50-50 there. And what I noticed is as the time went on, less and less the CEOs of smaller companies, and more I was getting calls from CEOs from large multinational corporations that they have someone who's really, really talented. They're amazing, but they're a bull in a china closet. Right? They're skills, they're high achievers. They just haven't figured out how to be effective in be success through others. So if you could teach them how to motivate their team, how to move themselves from being one of the players, even on the C-suite, if they moved up really fast, they haven't quite figured out that their team is now the leadership team.
Yep.
Right. So how do you do that? And what I noticed is when I'm working with my clients one-on-one, one of their biggest problems is managing up. Fighting with the CEO, right? Getting confused by the CEO's constant barrage of ideas and directions. And how do you manage all of that without having friction? Then I noticed that they had trouble being on a team of leaders, because if you're on the leadership team, if you're in the C-suite and you have other people who are pretty good at what they do and ambitious and want to be heard, how do you lead inside that team? Then how do you take care of your team below you?
Yep.
And then while you're trying to do all that, how do you not burn yourself to a crisp so that your marriage falls apart and your health falls apart? Like, so how do you do all that? So this last year, when I was trying to figure out what's my next book, what am I going to do, I started to look at what it is I actually do all day, every day. And this rising leader concept came up. So we put together a 12-week program. I'm writing the book right now. And I got a 12-week course. And that's what I do all day, every day, is help these leaders learn how to manage from every direction.
Well, and this is awesome. So, let's talk about that right now. So, what's the first step for a leader to go on that journey?
So you would think, so I broke it down into leading up, leading across, leading your team, and then leading yourself. You would think it would be starting with leading yourself. But what I found is the first thing I have to do is get the CEO, get the boss, whoever the boss is, I have to get that relationship intact.
Yeah,
so
right.
We start with learning how to become a trusted advisor to your boss. How do you speak truth to power, but still support and stay on the same team with your boss, and
Yes.
how do you cascade that down to your team, and then and toe the company line instead of your own or your own division's line.
Yes.
Now the next piece we have to do is, now what do you do with all the egos
Mm.
that are now on your team, right? And I don't mean egos in derogatory, I mean it that they're ambitious people.
Yep.
They want to be heard, they want to be seen just like you, they want to be trusted advisors just like you. So how do you build this co-opetition,
Mm. Mm.
right? Because you're
Yeah.
competing for attention and ideas and
Yeah.
promotions and that kind of thing, but you're also on the same team. So how do you do that co-opetition? So I go from the CEO then to that team, because usually if there's some semblance of leadership for people who work for you, there's a, even just by virtue of position, you
Mm.
can handle that. Then we
Yes.
work on the finer points of leading down, and then the last part is, and it actually happens during the whole thing, because I have to check your ego. It's funny, I was talking to a client just earlier today,
Yeah.
and he was just complaining about his CEO.
Yeah.
And he was going off, and I coached two of the guys on this particular leadership team, and he was going off on how the CEO is wasting resources and taking resources from his division, and they're driving him crazy, and he won't listen to him. And after he was done ranting, I said, "So do you mind if I give you a reflection?" And he
Hmm.
says, "I already talked to Sam, and Sam is the other guy I coach." And he said, "You know what Mark's going to say?" And he goes, "Are you the CEO?"
Right.
I have to right size him. I'm like, "Are you
Yeah.
the CEO? Like, is it really your problem that he's wasting resources? Is it really is this a hill you want to die on?"
Yeah.
And he's, like, "How does this affect you? Are you going to be able to change him?" "No, he's going to do this no matter what I say."
Yes.
"Great. You want to spend time on this." So I do have to work on their ego in each one of these.
How do you find that balance with that leader, especially when they are set in their ways and they themselves are trying to potentially, or they have recognized and trying to change it, or they're not? How do I manage that as a leader?
It's trust. The first thing is trust. So
Yeah.
if I'm coaching the CEO, I would say your job is 100% to develop trust with your team.
Mm.
But if I'm not coaching the CEO, there's nothing I can do about him or her, right? So if I'm coaching the person, your job is to create trust between you and your boss.
Great.
So if you're constantly fighting, if they don't feel safe around you, now you got to remember your boss is probably fighting on way more fronts than
Mm.
you are, right? If
Mm.
they're the CEO, they've got the board, they've got the P&L. Their career is going to live and die with the health of this company.
Mm.
So if you're another problem for them, every time they come to you, you've got an issue with something, you've got a hill you're dying on, these are they're going to tense up when they're around you.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
have to learn to, and I hate using the gun analogy, but you got to learn to be a sniper and not a shotgun.
Yeah.
You got
Right.
to learn, pick your battles, decide which hill you're going to die on, and use those.
Yes.
But the other thing is also, when I was talking to one, I was doing a meeting with the CEO and the person I was working with, and I said, sometimes uh, person one is going to have to say no to you,
Yeah.
but not, I'm going to have them say no in a certain way. Don't ever let them say no to me, right?
Right.
So wait, hold on a second. What I mean is, and what I teach them is, when your CEO says we need to do this, and it's the total wrong thing, and we don't have the resource and everything, you say, "You know what? That is a great idea. We can certainly do that. Here are the challenges with that." And then you
Mm.
can list the resources. Here's the impact of that. Is this still something you want to do? Always say yes, and then
Yep.
give them the choice and give them the consequence of that. But that develops trust. Once you become that trusted advisor, now you can give feedback.
Yes. Yeah.
Now you can assign tasks for
Yeah.
the job, for your boss. I think most bosses, if they're healthy, want to work for their team, not have their team work for them.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
Anyone that I know that's healthy and mature as a leader wants to work for the team. What do you need from me? I'm the Zamboni. I'm the one who's supposed to get things out of your way. What
Yes.
can I do for you?
Yeah.
So if they're healthy, they'll want that, but it has to be, the trust has to be both ways. Most
Um,
CEOs
uh,
are idea machines. They're
yeah,
supposed to be, they're supposed to be idea machines.
yeah,
You as an implementer, you as the trusted advisor are supposed to rein them in, right? We don't want, if you are running the company may not, I work with a lot of CEOs who are a bit nuts,
hmm,
right? They're brilliant, they're nuts, they're terrible managers,
yeah,
right? But they're the ones who will build the company to astronomical
yes,
levels.
yeah, yep,
You don't want to dampen them.
yep,
So your job as the trusted advisor is to help them not get into trouble
yep,
with all their ideas, with all their drive, with all, these are the things that we have to do. Do you ever hear the book Rocket Fuel?
yes, yep,
So rocket fuel, implementers and visionaries,
yes,
right? There's 7 visionaries to every 1 implementer.
yep,
Implementers are essential. The visionary is going to build the dream. It's going to build the company. The implementer is going to get it done, right? But so the implementer is the guardrails.
yes, yeah.
So I use that all the time in my conversations.
You know, the other thing I loved what you said as well, as a leader who has a another leader, right? And it doesn't necessarily always need to be leader. It could be our peers, could be our teams, right? It could be anyone, but they also have their own challenges. And my sense is too often we're only just thinking about ourselves in that piece
Yeah,
of the
only of us.
story, and we're not factoring everybody else's scenarios. Because then you also talked about not just professional boards and the outside influences that are actually impacting the way they feel, but you talked about health, family, like these things. So I don't want to go into the health family thing because that could be another deep element. I'd
That's a
love
whole
to.
because that's the whole reason why I do what I do. So in the Rising Leader workshop that I do, the first thing we do is we build a boss empathy map.
Yeah, right. I love
Right?
that.
What are their values? What are their
Hmm.
fears? What are their triggers? Right? What are their goals? What are their jobs? And it doesn't take that long. And anything you don't know, I have them go back and ask.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
What don't
really
I know
cool.
about your job? What don't I know about the pressures of what you're doing? What don't I know about what you're trying to accomplish? What
Yeah.
don't you like in a person who's working for you? What do you like? Learn these things. Then I
Yes.
have them do the same thing for their peers, and then I have them to do for their direct reports. Taking that little bit of time to understand the
Mm,
players in the game will give you pay dividends. I get grumbles like, why do I have to do that? It's so much work. The
yeah.
payoff is so huge because now again, when you're going up the ladder, do you want to create
Mm,
enemies who aren't
yes.
going to support you,
Yeah.
or do you want to create some stark raving fans who are like, yes, you should have gotten the promotion and I'm totally in your corner?
Yes.
Your
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah. A boss empathy map. Mark, you've got these nuggets. This is awesome. And it is a generational question. So the how how do we close that gap in your way of thinking of not just up, not just cross, but how do we ensure that leaders are also thinking about how the new generation, the younger generation, are coming into the workforce, and what do we need to do to really
So
to close the gap and really bring everyone around together?
I was just doing a coaching call before I got on this, and they asked me, Mark, do you know anybody who does workshops or culture things on how to connect with Gen Z people in the
Yeah,
workforce?
yeah,
And I was like, yeah, I'll have to look for that one. What I do know is that their values are different.
mm,
They grew up in a different time. They saw us killing ourselves. They saw the wreckage of our quest to be in the
that's a
1%.
great way to look at it. Yes, yeah,
And they don't want that. My own son is a genius. He is brilliant. And he's got a decent job. He's got a good job. And I keep telling him, like, dude, you're going to get married. You need to make a little bit more money. And he says to me, Dad, I know you're a coach. I'm not ambitious.
right,
I'm happy. And I'm like, yeah, no, he doesn't
yeah,
spend too much money. He's very
yeah,
happy with what he has. He's good at his job. Right? Why am I pushing him to be the crazy person I was, who I had my meltdown, which led to me being leaving and being a coach and helping people
yeah,
not have
right,
meltdowns?
yeah,
He's already got a good head on his shoulder.
Yes.
So we've got to compromise. I
Yes.
said, let's all right, let's do you're so much more mature and you're so much healthier than I am when it comes to the way you want to live your life.
Yes.
Let's compromise.
Yeah.
Can you stretch just a little bit so that we can get you to a certain level because you want to have children and there's just certain things you have to do. You're in America. In order to
Yes.
have healthcare, in order to be safe in America, you have to do a few things,
Yes.
right? And so we've struck up a compromise where he is doing like a little bit extra, but he's not going to set the world on fire in order to go get rich.
Yeah.
And he's happier
Yes.
than anybody I know. And I think that's the Gen Z people in general.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I think the shift people, because all I hear is these kids don't want to work. These kids don't want to work. These kids don't want to work. I don't think that's the case.
Mm.
I think they have a different value system.
Yes. Yeah, that's a
I think
great way.
everybody wants to work if they're inspired. I think
Yes.
everybody wants to work if they feel like they're making a difference,
Yeah.
right? I think they're just not driven the way we were from the Industrial Revolution.
Yes. Yeah. No,
So we have to
I
think differently.
so so the rising leader, um, what are some other things that you're going deep on as part of this coaching program?
One of the things is, where do you get your sense of worth?
Mm.
Because if you're a rising leader, usually you got your sense of worth from accomplishment.
And you touched on something that around, if you don't mind mentioning the other book, Only Tens 2.0, and confront your to-do list, transform your life. Can we talk about that for a second? Because you said something which was really cool then, moving from to-dos to getting it done. And it wasn't self-worth, you said something else about you finding that richness basically in yourself. Now we can get to the really cool stuff. Get that off your plate, and now we can get to the really cool stuff. So let's talk about that as a leader. And I want to go back to some real basics. As a leader who has a bunch of ideas, and you can do things, tick things all day, but it's not necessarily what you have to be doing to achieve the success that you've either achieved in the past. What am I focusing on to get those to-do lists done so we can start the transformation process?
Well, the first thing I do is I have people confront their to-do list. Because the way I wrote the book was I have severe ADHD, right? So when I was in business, I had like, never underestimate the power of an asshole sales manager.
Yes.
Right? Because I never wanted to walk in that meeting not knowing my accounts, not knowing what I needed to do, not knowing my forecast. So I made a lot of money out of fear of an asshole sales manager. When I became an entrepreneur, I no longer had an asshole sales manager. I had the laziest sales manager on the face of the planet.
Yeah, right.
And I was trying to figure out how to get things done because I was like squirrel and I should really research tropical fish tanks, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I wrote this book to give myself a PhD on how to get things done with ADD.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was it sold 1,500 copies in the first day, sold 1,500 copies the next day, and it sold thousands and thousands and thousands of copies. And people were giving it to CEOs and leadership people and all that.
Very cool.
What I realized is that we have a lot of what I call qualifiers on our to-do list. We do not guard our to-do list like a junkyard dog. There's things on our to-do list that are other people's priorities.
Mm. Mm.
Even the most powerful leaders don't set boundaries. I was always all things to all people all the time. Why? Because I could. I'm energetic. I'm smart. I'm accomplished, right? Until I couldn't.
Yes.
It's a badge of honor to be busy.
Yeah.
Busy. And, Steve Chandler, the great author, says busyness equals laziness.
Mm.
Right? Because you didn't prioritize. Now, there's all these books called The One Thing, Deep Work, all that stuff. Only Tens was my figuring out that there were things on my to-do list that were other people's priorities. There were things on my to-do list that were shoulds. Like, this is a really good idea. I should do this. Never thinking about whether I wanted to do it or didn't want to do it, whether I was committed to it or not. So it was on this week, then it was on next week, then it was on the week later. So I start confronting all these things because you wake up every Monday morning like, oh my God, I have so much I have to do. And by the time we confront all these things actually need to be delegated. Then we talk about why you wouldn't delegate. Oh, because they wouldn't do the work as well as I would.
Yeah.
Well, that's a coaching problem.
Yes.
And what most people don't know is the further they go up the ladder, or the bigger their company grows, the less their job is to do, the more their job is to coach. You
Yes.
are a coach now. Your job is to coach people. Your job is to delegate, work with the person to get the work to the level that you need it to be, and then let
Mm,
it go.
mm.
Now thank God most leaders won't do that. So I have a job.
Yes.
They don't want to give that feedback. They're like, let's
Yes.
hire Mark. We'll do a
Yeah.
360. He'll give the feedback. So
Yeah.
thank you. I have a job because that. But your job as a leader, as you move up the ladder, is to coach, coach, coach,
Yes.
train, 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 bring people up to the level that it needs to be, inspire people, motivate people, right? Do all that stuff. And the sooner you accept that, the less trouble you'll get.
Well,
And
yeah, I'm going to ask you a timing question of that. But before I do, so I want to, the question I'm going to ask, and I'll preface what I'm going to say with this
I didn't
because,
answer the last question yet.
oh, sorry. What was the last
I
question?
did. I did. So once you get all that stuff off your list,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You get all that superfluous stuff off your list that's distracting you.
Yeah.
Now your intuition, your gut, your creativity, because you're no longer in like this overwhelm and stress, you can now actually think about what a good thing to do is. You can be creative. You can
Yes.
stop firefighting and you can start proactively creating things.
Yes.
Or as they said in Texas, one of the guys in Texas says, "Oh, so you mean we're gonna hunt arsonists instead of firefight?" I was like, "That's it, right? We're gonna do that." And now all of a sudden, like new ideas come up. You'll get an idea to call
Yeah.
a prospect. You know, like that. Like now the creativity's there. So we move into that. And I want leaders in their zone of genius as much as possible. So
This is
that was the answer to that question.
Yeah, this is really interesting because you talk about, underlying behaviors and mindsets that sabotage time management, productivity, and productivity tools. It's interesting because you just piece something together that I couldn't quite explain to people. In our organization, we run off a lot of ideas, right? We run off a lot of ideas, and because we've got ideation in the workspaces, we've got, instead of focusing on task, we actually create ideas and then we rally around those ideas that keeps on moving. And within 48 hours, we've nailed that idea. And you agree or disagree whether the idea can help us achieve what we want to do. But we've done okay, great, this is what we're doing. This is what we're going to do to do it. Everyone just does it in one workspace and boom, you're off. And I couldn't quite articulate to people, how are we running off ideas instead of just a bunch of task lists? And I think that was it. Everything that we do is contextual to clarity of what it is we want to go to. And then we can do more the generation of ideas and thoughts and challenges and
You
keep
only work on
moving that one.
tens.
Yeah,
You only
man,
work on tens. So I try to
that's
get people
brilliant.
to, I have people say, rate things 1 through
Mm,
10.
yep,
Then I define a 10 for them. And then I tell them to throw away 1 through 9.
yeah,
Then they clutch their pearls. And we have to work through why we can throw away all those things.
yes.
And that's a whole other conversation. But once you
Yeah,
throw away
well,
1 through 9 and you're working on tens, rocket ship.
all right. Hey, to everyone listening, we're going to put Mark's links in the comments and that as well. So what you're talking about is so powerful, Mark. It is really, really powerful. Now, I just want to ask you a question around leadership. And a lot of our conversations are about potentially experienced leaders have achieved something and now they're trying to do other things. When you look at the moving from task to that 10, right? What stage of leadership should I really learn this? You started to touch on it. Is this an early part of if I can learn how to do this early, I'm going to be so much richer for it.
I think if you can learn it in school, it's you'll be mature for it.
Yeah, well,
If you can learn to let go of your maybes, if you can let go of your shoulds, if you could let go of other people's priorities, if you could let go of the dopamine hits of things that are like, for me, a dopamine hit is I'll make worksheets and workbooks all day long. I love making workbooks. And I have accountability partner, Katie, who I talk to every Monday. And she's like, no more workbooks, sales calls, Mark.
yeah,
Right.
that's cool.
No, but I'm so productive because I'm making worksheets.
Yes.
No, Mark, you're making sales calls.
Yes.
Right. So those dopamine hits, if you can learn that, you have you'll get things done. You'll get that whole thing. You're climbing the ladder, but is it on the right wall? You'll be climbing the right wall, and you'll be
Yeah.
making better progress on that ladder.
Um, Touches on a conversation I had a couple of days ago with a leadership group of about 6 people, and one of the it was the CIO, said we've become a task orientated culture, not an outcome orientated culture, and they can't marry the task against the outcomes, which they know deep down they're losing so much productivity, so many deliverables, they're losing people, right? Because it doesn't connect with, well, why am
Because
I
there's no
doing this?
creativity.
Yeah, and it's
There's no
just
creativity in a task list. If you just give someone the objective, they'll figure out all kinds of innovative
yeah,
ways of doing. You got to
yeah,
give them the leeway to do that.
yeah. Love that, love that. So, Mark, if we're gonna start to wrap this up, I'd love to just hear your one or two other pieces of advice for leaders, and how can they continue to lead into the future in a way that is rallied around the rising leader.
Great. The number one thing I want leaders to understand is that leadership is easy
Mm,
if it wasn't for people. If you didn't have to lead people, you're like piece of cake. So acceptance is the key to my serenity, as they say in AA.
yep.
Acceptance that you're leading people who are fallible, you're fallible, and you're a pain in the butt too. And that instead of saying, "Why do I have to?" What did someone call the chief repetitive officer? Do I have to really be the chief repetitive officer all the time? Yes, that's your job now. That's what you get paid for.
Mm, mm,
So acceptance is the key to my serenity. There is master the accountability feedback loop.
mm,
The accountability feedback loop is one of the hardest things to do because it takes time and effort and patience, which is basically give a piece of work or assign an objective, have that come back, discuss the merits, discuss the gaps, send it back, and just constantly keep that accountability, keep that feedback going
mm.
until things are the way that you want it. Most people, it breaks down. They'll either accept subpar work, or they'll just do it themselves and fix it themselves.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then they're overwhelmed and they're working until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
But if you can master that, you will create a team of leaders who will be better than you are at
Yes.
everything that you want them to do.
Yeah. That is brilliant. That is brilliant. And you also these coaching frameworks and what you're doing is ingrained in the individual. And I love your take on people leading people. If leadership would be easy if it wasn't leading people. I get it. I get it. So that's ingrained. Then when you talk about operationalizing that, what are those steps to operational? I could go all day on this topic, by the way,
Yeah.
because you're just giving so much gold. So I understand the idea behind it. I understand what you're saying. I understand. I'm listening. I'm acknowledging. Now, when I go put it in practice, what are the things that you're helping your clients do with that?
9 times out of 10, difficult conversations.
Mm,
The topic of difficult conversations. If I can get people to master the art of difficult conversations, this operationalizes itself. So
yes.
if I can get them to set boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
set boundaries in a responsible and communicative way, so that it creates relationship instead of breaks relationship. If I can get people to say no when they need to say no, if I
Mm-hmm.
can get people to create agreements instead of have expectations of people. So in other words, instead of saying, why won't they do that's it's in their job
Mm,
description, why won't they do that? Have you created a strong agreement specifically? When is this going to be done? How is it going to be done, et cetera, and so forth? If I can get them to work on each one of these things, giving feedback, uh, that operationalizes things automatically.
yes. Yeah.
I think the inability to have these difficult conversations, speak your mind with candor, but also with respect and with relationship in mind,
Yeah.
uh, thwarts everything.
Yeah. And
Misunderstandings, missed deadlines, all kinds of stuff. And if we can do that, I think it automatically operationalizes itself.
yeah, fantastic. Well, I am going to close it there because I had another question. And I think my next question was going to go again into something, because what I will say it. What I was going to say was, I mean, when I listen to you, there's a lot of logic there. Like there's a lot of deep expertise what you're saying. Right. And even that when you reference PhD into learning about ADD, I've got ADHD too, by the way. So a lot of what you're saying just resonates.
All the best people do.
Yeah. But even saying that, we've got all the ideas and then it's rallying them back, right? So, and that's what I'm super passionate about, is how do we help not just people, how do we help everyone get better of, the way that they manage themselves, the way they can manage their teams and the company. So it is everything that you're talking about, and I'm super passionate about that. So I was going to ask another question, but I'm not going to. Actually, I've decided not to. I won't, because we will go into
You
this.
made a choice.
Yes, I made a choice.
You stood in your power and made a choice.
I said no. I said no to myself. I said no to myself. But my take is, Mark, we'll be talking again. Because I'd love to get you on the show again when the Rising Leader is officially launched, and I'd love for you to share that journey with this audience, because typically in these sessions you get 3 or 4 really good nuggets. I got about 8, 9 from you today.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And that was really, really cool. So to our audience, please reach out to Mark. We'll put all his bio and link in the threads below. And by the way, Mark, your programs are global programs, right? Yes. I know you do local speaking and that sort of stuff, but these programs are able to be launched across.
I have clients all over the world. I am on different continents all day long.
Yeah, I can just think of clients I've spoken to in the last week that need what you're talking about, right? Awesome. And the challenges that they're facing every day to do it. But we always tend to get so busy, we don't stand and stop sometimes to really learn.
The next cohort of the Rising Leader is January 2023.
There you go, man. Well, that's awesome. Well, we'll get you on early next year onto another episode, and we'll dive deep on that. So, Mark, thank you very much for joining us today, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Awesome.